Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Delighted to say, joining us today, David Ornstein from The Athletic and Daniel Storey from The Eye. Welcome to both of you guys. Obviously with a late drama this evening, Back Pages still coming into us now, but we have had a couple that have made it in. We're going to start with The Mirror. John Cross and Andy Dunn, Heaven and Hell. That's after Elliot Anderson with a spectacular equaliser late on for Nottingham Forest, putting a big dent in Manchester City's title hopes. And John and Andy say advantage Arsenal as Anderson hits City. David, I'm going to come to you first on this. How big a day have we just potentially seen in this dramatic title race?
Yeah, it feels like a massive night. Could it be a turning point? I mean, Arsenal were in the lead already, but certainly firmly in the ascendancy now. However it came about, that was another tough watch against Brighton, as was their victory over Chelsea, but they won't care. 6 points from those games, and Brighton coming off the back of a couple of good wins themselves. Arsenal would have just been buzzing to have got their 3 points, but for Forest to have nicked a draw at City, I say nicked, but Ryan Yates could have won it for them or put them 3-2 ahead. There was a late scramble that could have seen City score as well. And it wasn't just one spectacular goal by Elliot Anderson, but also Morgan Gibbs-White as well. When you look at City's fixture list coming up, Newcastle in the Cup, Real Madrid over 2 legs in the Champions League, wedged between, I think, a game against West Ham away in their next league game. Then they play Arsenal, don't they, in the cup final, and then Chelsea and Arsenal again. It's going to be really tough now for Manchester City. They do have a game in hand. Arsenal's fixture list on paper looks kinder, although they're pretty weary. They're depleted. They're not playing the sort of style that many would want to see from them. But this does feel pretty significant, I would say, tonight. And Arsenal now, if they don't close out the title from here, they'll only have themselves to blame.
Well, in the Telegraph, Sam Dean has been saying advantage Arsenal, Gunners in title control as City pay for Forest slip up. And Daniel, David there mentions, the style of Arsenal at the moment. It wasn't the prettiest performance today at all, was it? They weren't great going forward. And Fabian Hürzeler has had some interesting comments made after the game. He said, "I will never be the type of manager who tries to win that way. There was only one team that tried to play football." What did you make of those comments? And does it matter that Arsenal at the moment aren't exactly turning on the style?
No, I mean, it doesn't matter whatsoever to Arsenal. It clearly matters to Fabian Hürzeler for whatever reason. Him and Mikel have had a little bit of history over their fixtures in the Premier League. There's been some sort of back and forth and barbs, and Arteta after the game kind of almost refused to talk, or refused to sort of broach the subject of Fabian Hürzeler. They clearly don't hugely get on. And yeah, sometimes the best time to ask a manager for a really good quote is just after they've lost and feel a bit sour about it. And that's clearly where Fabian was. I suspect there are Brighton fans this season who would have said we'd quite like to have won ugly over the sort of 11-game winless run. But Arsenal are good value for it because they win. And they win ugly, they grind out results. I didn't think they were good at all tonight. I didn't think they were particularly good against Chelsea. Both games could have gone against them. But when you play so many games that could go against you and win nearly all of them, that suggests there's something deep inside you that pulls those sort of games closer towards you. And look, it's a fine margin sport, and Arsenal seem to be winning the fine margins.
David, do you think that's the kind of win that champions put in at this stage of a title race, or are you concerned that Arsenal are just not playing that well at the moment?
I would have been concerned about Arsenal for tonight, and the fact that they came through it will be a massive morale boost for them. Off the back of that little stutter where they drew at Brentford, could have won late through Martinelli, drew at Wolves. They should not have conceded that goal, and it felt like, many of us don't like the word bottling, but certainly cracks were emerging in their pursuit of the title, having gone so close 2 years in a row. And if you think back to the sort of gritty results that champions pull out of the bag, whether it be Manchester City, Liverpool in more recent times, Man United, Chelsea, Arsenal historically themselves, tonight does feel like one of those nights. Definitely, you've just got to grind it out however it comes. It felt like they were on their last legs at times. There's a real lack of invention for whatever reason, maybe a bit of anxiety in their play. Certainly saw that against Chelsea. I don't really subscribe to the criticism on set pieces and corners. That's part of their artillery, part of every team's artillery. If you watch Manchester City tonight, they were throwing everything at those corners, bombarding Matt Sells in the 6-yard box, and they didn't manage to come through. Arsenal played very little football tonight, certainly not really any attractive football. And you can understand the frustration of a Hertzler, of purists, many people in the game talking about it, many of us writing about it and commentating on it. But frankly, I've got respect for what Arsenal are doing in the sense that everybody asked them to win, and that's what they're on course to do. It was a point made by Thierry Henry recently. If they do get over the line, then you would expect to see a return to some kind of style in the subsequent season and the times ahead. But at this point, with the challenge of Manchester City, I don't remember people scrutinising previous champions quite like this. And yeah, you could say that's because they were playing a nicer brand, but ultimately the name on the trophy doesn't include a footnote about how they won it, and that's all Arsenal will care about right now. They'll also be having their eye on the other competitions too. They play Mansfield in the Cup on Saturday, then come Leverkusen over 2 legs, and of course the League Cup final. So somehow they're remaining in contention for all 4. I don't think they will until the very end, but if they get 1 or 2 pieces of silverware, the Arsenal fans and everybody at the club will be absolutely elated.
Yeah, Daniel, I want to come to you shortly on this perception of Arsenal. But first of all, let's have a listen to some of what Fabian Hertzler said after the game.
I will never be that kind of manager who tries to win in that way. I want to develop players. I want that my players are keep improving and keep playing football on the pitch. And in the end, of course, every team will manage and waste time. But I think there has to be a limit, and the limit has to be set by the Premier League. The limit has to be set by the referees. At the moment, they just can do what they want. I'm not sure if I would ask now everyone here in the room, did he really enjoy this football game? I'm sure maybe one raises his arm because he's a big Arsenal fan. But beside that, no chance. Where will this go in the future? That's my question. Where will this go? Like at one point, one game we play 60-minute netto time, and then when you play against Arsenal only 50 minutes, then it's 10 minutes different. So is this for what the supporters are paying for? You get my point?
Yeah, well, Hertzler at the moment definitely doesn't enjoy the way that Arsenal play. Daniel, what do you think about this narrative of Arsenal being boring and great at the dark arts? Is it fair, or is it sour grapes from managers and players that have just been beaten by Arsenal?
I don't think people would be saying it if they were 4th in the league, put it that way. I think them being top and it being so successful is clearly part of that narrative. I think the obsession or the narrative around the set pieces, I get it. But as David says, other teams are doing this as well. The difference is that Arsenal are really, really good at it. So it becomes a frustration on the part of other coaches because they seem to have found this cheat code that nobody can stop. They put the ball into an area, they compete physically for it, one defender wins it and nods it to another defender. It's happened in 9 games they've opened the score in the season doing it. So they're clearly very effective at it. Over time, people will come up with a way to stop it. Whether it's, I saw Aston Villa leaving 4 up front tonight when Chelsea had a corner in a bid to bring back some of those defenders and stop it getting so crowded for the goalkeeper. We'll find a way. Football goes in cycles. At the moment, we're in this cycle of set pieces feeling like they're kings and successful teams feeling like they can rely upon them to win games and then see it out, because I think players are probably pretty tired at the moment. But it will go in circles. And if Arsenal win the league doing it, as David said again, no one's going to care in 5 years how you did it, particularly if you use that first title as a platform to do something else.
Yeah, and this could be the decisive night. You never know. We got some interesting results all round today in the Premier League, didn't we? Let's go to Newcastle beating Manchester United 2-1 at home with 10 men for pretty much half of the match. You can see there in the Star, 10-man tune caused car crash. And David, it's the first setback, really, isn't it, for the Michael Carrick reign? Has this just reminded us that there are still frailties in this Manchester United side?
A bit of a reality check. I don't quite think it's the bubble burst, because I've been so impressed with Michael Carrick so far. Not just the results, which have been impressive, but the way he set Manchester United up. Maybe if Ruben Amorim was criticised for being too steadfast in his commitment to his own style and formation and system, Michael Carrick was a bit more pragmatic, went back to basics, was doing what a lot of us thought was obvious with the players at his disposal. And it's worked. Of course, he's incredibly popular with the Manchester United fans, and in many people's minds, he's been on course to, at the very least, put himself in contention for the permanent job and maybe even get it. That might still prove to be the case, but this is an opportunity missed. They didn't play well in the first half. It was a really good game, but in the second half and with a one-man advantage, they were on top of Newcastle and they just weren't clinical enough. Bruno Fernandes getting frustrated at times and ultimately being done by that sucker punch. I mean, there's been a lot of criticism of Newcastle recently, scrutiny even on Eddie Howe, and that was an amazing response for them. And I think Manchester United will be bitterly disappointed to have come away from that with defeat, not even a point. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a sort of panic situation. The way they've climbed under Carrick and put themselves in contention for Champions League qualifications, not only impressive, but I wouldn't bet against them continuing. And they've got the weapons when you look at how well Bruno played again tonight, and Casemiro having a new lease of life in his final months as a Manchester United player. Cunha and Buemo, they're so dangerous. Sesko, not such a good night for him, but recently he's been excellent. There's a lot of reason to be cheerful there. But yeah, there was also a lot to mull over in terms of that performance, which is not quite at the standard that we've seen from Carrick recently. They did get a warning shot from Crystal Palace, who were ahead against them at Old Trafford and were maybe unfortunate to concede a penalty with Lacroix being sent off. But United came through that and they need to get back on track straight away.
In terms of reasons to be cheerful for Newcastle, Daniel, it kind of feels like their season hasn't really kick-started. There's still a lot to play for the rest of the season, particularly trying to get back into Europe. Could this be the game that gets them going?
It needs to be, because it has been a season of false dawns, because there have been 3 or 4 of these games where you could almost predict before the game that Newcastle at home to Manchester United is a game that they'll be up for, that the crowd will be with them, that there'll be an energy from minute 1, which there was, and that they'll use that as fuel. And that's when Newcastle under Eddie Howe have been at their best, when they've played with that intensity in midfield that opponents feel like, even if they have only got 10 on the pitch, you feel strangled in possession. They were really good at it tonight. That has to be the blueprint going forward, because there've just been too many, both at home and away, where they've just sort of walked through games a little bit. There doesn't seem to be that energy. I know they're struggling with Nick Voltemada's position, and Anthony Elanga's been struggling on the right, and they've just not quite got a balance right after the summer transfer business. But they're still in the Champions League. They owe Barcelona. They will feel something, because they will at least think they should have got a point in the Champions League group game. They now play Manchester City, coming off the back of a hiccup, who may think the FA Cup is the one that we maybe need to leave aside, given that we're in the final of another domestic cup competition and in the Champions League against Real Madrid. So it's a good time to play them. The energy will be up again in the crowd because of how they played tonight. It's easy to see how these things snowball. And look, Eddie Howe's always been a coach who, when the mood is good, he is incredibly good at maintaining that mood through a consistency of strategy, of a consistency of delivering the message. He just needed to get Newcastle back into that groove. They'll obviously hope that tonight's that.
David, how about Chelsea? going to Villa Park and winning 4-1. It's going to be a real bum fight, feels like it anyway, for positions 3, 4, 5, which we think will get us into the Champions League or get English sides into the Champions League. Does this result at Villa Park feel significant in that race? What is going on with Aston Villa right now?
Massively significant for Chelsea and for Villa too. Chelsea now level on points with Liverpool. They're breathing down the necks of Villa, and Villa have been ravaged by injury in midfield. When they took the lead, you suddenly thought to yourself, Villa reigniting despite a sort of loss of key players, a bit of a loss of form, and then Chelsea just steamrolled them. Actually, they were the better side, you could say, against Arsenal on Sunday, and they picked up where they left off. João Pedro's on fire. What a player he is. And Cole Palmer perhaps coming back to the boil. They haven't fully sorted out their discipline problems. It was Liam Rosenior himself tonight who got booked. So not setting the best example, but yeah, that's massive. And Chelsea really need Champions League. We saw their financial results, the UEFA report that came out for the 24-25 season, record levels of record losses and for English football, and so they're in the Champions League now, and that's benefiting them, and they'll hope to progress there, but they need to get back in, and their fans, of course, expect that. Equally, Villa really need Champions League football. When you see them posting losses themselves and having a sort of roadmap with UEFA to how they're going to comply with their rules, they're not generating enough revenue, and it's Champions League that they need to get back into after this season out of it. And in Emery, they've got a top manager, lots of players, they're capable, but Ollie Watkins hasn't quite been on the form. Morgan Rogers, they've come to expect very high standards of, and they'll need those guys to deliver. Emi Martinez in goal, and these are the moments that those big players need to step up. But yeah, maybe it felt like a bit of a shifting in that race. Huge night for Chelsea. However, there are still so many twists and turns to come. It's going to be a fascinating race for those positions.
Yeah, it really is. And Villa just need to find a way to pick themselves up somehow. Right, don't go anywhere, please, guys. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to look at more of the sports stories in the morning's papers, including this in the Express. Big T20 World Cup semi. pages tonight, and welcome back to our two guests, David Ornstein from The Athletic and Daniel Storey from The Eye. Guys, let's talk about the relegation battle, shall we, right now? Because once again, some very interesting results at the bottom of the table as well. West Ham going to Fulham and winning. Daniel, they are now level on points with Nottingham Forest. Psychologically, how important is that?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, listening to both managers after the game, they very much played it by the book, which is we focus on what we need to do and we don't care about other results yet. I completely understand that, but it's not just about what they're doing to each other. It's about how many teams they're dragging into it. We know that Spurs are one. I think we can now add Leeds to that because they lost at home to Sunderland last night. They've got this really good run of home games to come, but they started that run pretty badly. And now it now feels like we have 4 teams involved rather than just 2. West Ham have been really good for quite a long time, actually. I mean, they struggled in Nuno's early games as he didn't quite get the system, played a few players out of position. But since then, they just look a really effective Nuno football team, which is to have Jared Bowen and Somerville on the wings to soak up pressure, to attack quickly. And they bought 2 strikers in January. So their attack, I think, is the best of that group of teams at the bottom right now. And Somerville scored again tonight. He's been superb this season, probably West Ham's best attacking player. So if he's the foil for Bowen, that's a pretty good combination.
Yeah, it's a good point, isn't it, David? I mean, form is very important, isn't it, in a relegation battle when you get towards the end. And West Ham really seem to be in the best form of any of the teams around the bottom, barring Wolves, perhaps, but maybe too late for them. So how concerned would you be if you were the likes of Forest, Spurs and Leeds at the fact that West Ham seem to be picking up points regularly at the moment?
Well, Forest's form isn't terrible if you judge by how they played at Manchester City tonight. They were excellent, and that will give cause for optimism at the City ground. Leeds, I mean, against Manchester City also played really well in the first half. They should have won. They could have been out of sight by half-time. Before the Semenyo goal. So there is a bit of form in that region of the table. West Ham are definitely above at the moment, and they'll be delighted with that. Somerville electric and really stepping up when it's mattered. But the recruitment and that owes some credit to Nuno Espirito Santo himself, who basically took control of it, helped by his representative, the so-called super agent George Mendes, and the West Ham ownership, basically, because there's no sporting director there now. A lot of scrutiny over all of that, and it does seem to be delivering somewhat. Some tough tests ahead, but they've stepped up. I like Tati Castellanos up front. He really sort of puts himself about and makes an impact. You know what I'm going to say here. There's one omission in that area. They are out of form completely, and it's Tottenham Hotspur. They're now 1 point above the relegation zone, and it's not just a possibility. It's a real relegation fight on their hands, and they'll not be sleeping easily tonight ahead of that massive game against Crystal Palace tomorrow.
It really is a huge game, isn't it? And the new manager actually has had a bit to say today. The Metro covering Igor Tudor's press conference earlier. He said a number of interesting things, but one in particular, he said, this is sport. The club, Tottenham, has always been a club with big pressure, so you need to be ready to accept this and stand up, not stay behind. Take responsibility and have courage to confront these things. This is the best way to do things, the only way to do things. And he is a bit of a sort of dictatorial head coach, isn't he, Daniel? But it seems like he's questioning the character of some of his players, and he wants, particularly the senior players, to really stand up at this crucial moment for the club.
Yeah, I think it's true to say that we haven't got a good cop. He's very much come in as the sergeant major figure. I think that can work, but it only works if the results are good quickly, because otherwise players just turn off from that stuff. They wonder. Look, he's already got the issue that most Spurs fans, or all Spurs fans and all players know, he's probably only going to be there for a maximum of 10, 11 league games. So he's already under pressure from that. It's hard to get your message across quickly. Motivation is the only way really to do that, because the tactics in the first 2 games I think have been odd. He's played players out of position. He's not getting a tune out of Conor Gallagher or Javi Simmons. Dominic Solanke was basically playing as a midfielder at the weekend, dropping deep. That none of that has worked. So it has to be motivation. I thought it was interesting that he sort of talked up the players and their work in training. I think that possibly suggests that he realises maybe he's gone a little bit too hard, not just on the players, but on the club itself. I know Spurs fans are very open to hearing negative assessments and analysis of what's going on at the club now, and I get that. But for the new manager to come in and say, we need to be better at midfield, defence, attack, and brains, you kind of think, well, there's not a lot left then, and none of that has improved so far. Palace is a huge game because they've got some pretty gentle home games, Spurs, but they also have the worst home record of any team in English football other than Sheffield Wednesday this season. So that doesn't exactly provide home comfort. One win and it'll turn, because Igor Tudor can sort of sell the first two games as people thought we'd lose to Arsenal, people probably thought we'd lose to Fulham. So tomorrow's huge.
Got to jump in there, guys. It really is. That's a good way to end it. Thanks very much, David. Thank you very much, Daniel. And you can join